Look, the history of money, it's a big subject. There's a lot to it. And like I said, it is not taught in schools. I never even knew anything about this stuff at all or cared, really, frankly, didn't fucking care. Because I thought everything was fine, you know? But when you start peeling back the layers, and especially when I got into cryptocurrency and I started actually doing math and learning about how money works, it just innately teaches you that the system we are using right now is fucking broken. It's really bad. And I'm not an expert in anything. I'm not an expert in Bitcoin. I'm not an expert in money. I'm just a regular pleb who didn't know shit about shit when I first started into this. But using cryptocurrency has forced me to upgrade my financial IQ like 1,000,000%. Hey now. Hey now, hey now, hey now, hey now. Logan, here again. DeFi Cast. Happy to be back and recording again. Just about to leave on a fantastic family trip. I mentioned it in the last episode. We're headed towards Florida. You know, we're not going to Mar-a-Lago. We're not going to see Trump, but we are driving down, and it's going to take about 16 hours with a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. It should be fun. It should be a blast. I don't see any problems with it at all. I'm sure it'll be smooth as ever. But welcome back, guys. Welcome back to the show. A little bit of a different show today. We're going to talk a little bit about what is money. What is money? We're going to just touch on a little bit of the history of money, how it came about, and where we've gotten to at this point, just now with the birth of digital assets. Slexa's on holidays herself this week. She won't be joining us on the show. She's working on a couple of special projects of her own. I'm sure you'll hear about it in the future. I hope you're enjoying Celexa. She's been a fantastic addition to the show. And we're learning lots about AI and how they build themselves and how you yourself use them. And I will say, the more you start to use these AI bits, these agents and this technology, it's almost like the AI, well, the AI is obviously much smarter than you in some aspects, based on, you know, knowledge, speed of access, and what they can do. But it's funny, the more you work with them, and trying to get them to do what you'd like and teaching them how to operate on their own, you do learn quite a bit about the technology and how to interact with it, how to talk to it, how to frame your questions and your instructions. And me and the rest of my buddies in the team at DeFiCast, you know, we've been experimenting with a bunch of AI things, and discovering so many cool things that we hope we can show you guys in the future. The markets today, not doing the greatest. In the last 30 days, Solana has dropped almost 40%. You know, we've had obviously a couple of bad news wraps we've talked about already on the show. We won't go over those again, but another hit today. PumpFund, pumpfund.com or pumpfund.io, the launch your own shitcoin site has decided not to use Radium anymore, and they are going to have their own DEX and exchange. So that's a pretty big hit to the regular Solana apparatus, where we all know, you know, 90% of the activity on Solana was meme coins and pump fund. That's just me throwing out a number. It's pretty high though. There isn't a lot of other stuff on Solana that I know about that's causing, you know, driving usage and value on the Solana blockchain. We've seen people are starting to bridge over to other places to gamble, I guess, and explore. Sonic, haven't looked at it myself. It's another blockchain. There was a lot of liquidity moving from chains into Sonic. Sometimes these things happen and nothing really comes about it. And sometimes that sort of rotation ends up being what everyone's using forever. And Solana, used to be that. So there's also on the institutional front, the SEC is dropping a whole bunch of cases against OpenSea, the NFT conglomerate. It's dropping charges and investigations on various other cryptocurrency related industry investigations. They're just dropping them in full based on obviously Trump's pro crypto cabinet, you would say. And the other thing that's been going on is another big piece of news today was a big hedge fund, Citadel. I think they have about $70 trillion of assets, I'm going to say. They have decided to enter the cryptocurrency space and provide liquidity on various chains and exchanges, and previously had not touched crypto at all. Stayed away from it, but since the pro crypto landscape has been changing and right in front of our eyes under Trump, that this is something that bigger hedge funds and money are deciding to get into. So even with all of this like super bullish institutional stuff, like we've said before, there's so much institutional interest and news and adoption and people coming into the space that would have never been here. And yet the cryptocurrency asset class is struggling other than Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin's having trouble breaking 100K, but it's not dumping, and everything else is kind of having a really bad time. There isn't a lot of big winners out there. Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit more of an overview of the news than I wanted to do, but there's just so much that happens so quickly in crypto. But what I did want to talk about today was kind of the history of money and just kind of point out a couple of things that was surprising to me when I started researching into this topic. When I was young, I wasn't taught really anything about money. I knew what it was and I knew people used it and things cost money, and my parents didn't have a lot of it. That's pretty much all I really knew about it. Even when I got my first credit card when I was 18 years old, which I still have, I really didn't even understand what I was doing with it. I thought it was like a safety haven. I didn't have any money to do something, so I just put it on my credit card. I didn't know what interest rates were. I didn't know that the money that I was putting on credit was going to be charging back to me 25% interest on all of my purchases. And, I quickly ran into trouble as a young person. I moved to Toronto, Canada, very expensive place to live in Canada. And I didn't know what I was doing with money at all. And it took me a long time to figure out that I didn't really have the money that I was spending, and I had to curb at least my spending. But even when I did that, I still didn't really understand money. They don't teach it in school. You might do like a little business project, but they don't tell you where money came from. They don't tell you about interest rates and how the government controls that and has knobs that they can turn on the economy to put pressure in different places to affect things. So the surprising thing to me is it's such an important part of our entire fabric of society, and yet nobody really talks about it like ever openly, right? It's always a faux pas subject, even with your friends at the table or whatever. Nobody's really open and transparent about money. And money is a technology, really. Money is something that has enabled society and civilizations to advance forward rather quickly. Way back when things first started, the money was bartering, where you would trade a service for a service. And it was value for value, but that value was hard to describe to somebody else. It was hard to come to deals when it was because there's no medium of exchange other than the fact that, hey, I'm going to hunt, and I'm going to bring back all the food, but I need somebody to prepare it, clean it, whatever. And then it forms these little societies of marketplaces of what has to happen. But for society to advance quickly, it really needed something that was not global, but a universal recognition of value. Where if you didn't have anything that I wanted, we couldn't trade. Thus, when there's a new intermediary value exchange, then instead I can just say, well, you don't have anything that I really want, but you can pay me in shells or metal coins or something that's recognized as something that holds a value. And a lot of Bitcoiners today will compare that to the hard money standards, which is really where most of our value had been derived coming into the 21st century. Hard money with intrinsic value and scarcity was most evident in metal coins and paper money backed by gold, unlike today, right? Today, it is not backed by gold or silver or anything hard. Modern banking began when central banks, like the Bank of England, I think 1960s or 1990s, or sorry, 1690s, leading to today's fiat system. And since 1970, that's how governments and entities have managed with tools like interest rates. So if you think about it, 1970, it's really not that long ago. I was born in 1984. 1970 is not a long time ago. And that's when, the United States and most of the world went off a hard money standard. They got off the gold standard and just started basically trying to control the entire monetary system on their own by turning the dials of interest rates and printing money and QE and all of the things how they can affect the economy. That's not that long ago. And here we are in 2024, 2025, and we're talking about a digital money. And it has moved very quickly. If you look at 1970 to now and how advanced we think Bitcoin is, which it really isn't, it's only really the first, layer and iteration of digital money that's going to be built upon. We're still pretty early to this party.
Hey you there, crypto plebs. Logan and I want to thank you for listening. The DeFi Cast podcast, live streams, and content are brought to you by a group of individuals passionate about decentralized finance and all the opportunities it can offer, striving to provide the most real and transparent narration, opinions, and experiences. If you're enjoying the content, the best way to support DeFi Cast is to subscribe on Fountain FM, the Nostr podcast app, and start zapping sats. Find our links to Fountain FM as well as Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and Telegram at linktr.ee/DeFiCast.
Now, in the 1970s, when we got off the gold standard, governments and financial institutions quickly learned that they could control many aspects of the economy because they could inflate the money supply, they could manipulate it, and they could fix short-term problems that the nation or world was facing at the time. It was viewed as a pretty big advancement in how we treat money in the beginning, because we could issue a lot of debt. We could, we're a debt-run society now. Instead of gold being the way that we back our currencies of how much gold you have and issue paper for it, instead, there's just balance sheets, and money's created out of thin air. When you go to the bank and get a loan, that's them literally inventing the money, bringing it into existence, creating it, the debt, and giving it to you and charging you money on top of that for them to create the money for you. And that's your interest rate. And that seemed that seemed pretty advanced because that allowed businesses and people to go and do things that they wouldn't have normally been able to do without acquiring, more hard money. They could go get a loan for a business or a new business venture that eventually would be profitable. But in the beginning, I mean, we all know most businesses fail in the first 5 years. But it did allow this ability for business people to expand their horizons and expand their visions of what would be possible for a business that they were creating, as long as they could pay back the money. Now, even in the business world, when you can't pay it back, you go bankrupt. That's it. The money gets deleted. You get labeled, as, don't loan to this person. They can't pay their money back. And that's really hard to get away from, into the future. And that's why a lot of people are calling for, a shift back to a hard money standard of some sort. And so when I say hard money, it's money that it's backed by a commodity, and it ensures that a value is tied to a tangible asset. And that commodity has intrinsic value, and the value is based on the material itself, like gold or silver. There's a limited supply, based on the availability of the commodity, preventing the inflationary aspects that we see in our monetary policy these days. There can't be any inflation on a limited supply of something if you know exactly how much there is. You can't fake that. And so that is something that is becoming a huge problem for us. The entire world is in a lot of debt. The United States debt clock is a ridiculous counter of money that they owe. And it's like, how would you ever pay that back? And it's going back to a hard money standard, like most likely. So durability is another hard money asset. It can withstand wear and tear over time. This is why gold was used, and before that, it would be these hard beads or jewels or things that are indestructible, diamonds, anything that can just last longer than a human lifetime, basically, knowing that it's never going to go away. So portability is another aspect, easy to carry and use in transactions. Now, back in the gold rush days, people be sifting for gold out in the rivers, and because it was such a scarce asset, even a little nugget of gold was worth quite a bit of money, and you'd chip off some or shave it off, and you'd weigh it. And that's how you would pay or know how much it was worth to trade with the gold. Now, when we advanced even quicker into the future, now you got the gold bars, and they're very heavy, and they're stored in huge vaults. If you want to move a couple million or $1 billion of gold, you need a armored fleet of trucks and staff, and a very costly way to move money. It's not very portable when you talk about gold, and that's one of the biggest problems with a gold standard is just the portability of it is not very good, and you have to trust the people who are storing it for you, unless you've got a gold dungeon in your backyard where you stole all your stuff. But that brings security risks even to yourself, because your neighbor's going to look over the fence and be like, yo, what do you got going on there? Like, oh, I swear I'm burying all my gold. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, you're going to get robbed, right? So, there's security issues with that too. And then the final one is divisibility. So it can be divided into smaller units for various transactions. So like we were saying with the gold, it can be chipped up, it can be shaved up, weighed. It can be... Now, later on, they started issuing paper notes because of this portability problem. They would say, okay, I've got, your 10 gold bars. I'm going to give you 5 pieces of paper saying, this is how much gold you have, and you can trade that paper as you would trade the gold. And then, you'd have to do the settlement process, which would be once a month or once a year. All of your paper debts that you've written out to people, that you have to settle those debts, and you have to move the gold into where it's supposed to be to pay people back. So it's a very not archaic, but slow moving system. And since the invention of the internet and how quickly technology is advancing for our world in general, this isn't going to fit very well. So that's why going back to a gold standard might not work very well. Although I would be in favor of it, even if it's not Bitcoin, if it is going back to a limited supply of something, I don't know if that's possible with how much debt that the entire world has racked up. And you don't really know how much gold there is. There is a limited supply, but like you can always discover more sometimes, right? Like you discover a big gold mine, that affects the value of the gold that's already in circulation, if you would say. So with these hard money properties, this is something that would fix a lot of problems we have today with inflation and having one entity controlling all of the money and deciding what the inflation rates are going to be. And a lot of the things that they've tried since the 1970s, like the trickle down economics and that kind of stuff, which was basically like, we're going to print a bunch of money. It's going to create a bunch of opportunities in business. It's going to drive the economy. It's going to drive, it's going to drive the economic engine of a nation to create and produce materials and exports. If you can't really have that happen now, based on all the debt that we have, and that trickle down aspect of it doesn't happen. It doesn't work. You'd print a bunch of money, and the people that receive that money first, that is the most value that's going to have. And as that money gets circulated, it makes all the money out there that's already there, like your check that you're going to get from work next week, worth a percentage less, It just doesn't go as far as it used to. And everyone feels that now. And that's something that's very interesting too, is this, like I was saying about the very beginning, people don't talk about money a lot. But I do notice in my day-to-day interactions with people in my town where I live, even in the news, it's talked about quite a bit now. Money is discussed, like everything is so expensive and this is and we can't afford this. And my kids will never be able to own a house. And that's really unfortunate. And I don't know if we head towards like a hyperinflation type of society. I hope not. The introduction of Bitcoin basically filling all of the requirements for a hard asset with even better security and personal sovereignty, where you don't have to depend on anyone else but yourself to store it, and it's digital and it holds value and it's limited. It's something that it fits, and people are going to compare gold and Bitcoin all the time. Bitcoin is just a better gold. It is a digital gold when you go down the rabbit hole and research money specifically and how we interact and use money. And knowing that who is it? Barack Obama said in an interview once, he said, if this thing about Bitcoin is true, that's extremely powerful. That means everyone's walking around with a phone in their pocket and it's basically a Swiss bank account. And that's true. And no government's going to want that for its people. No government's going to want that freedom of money that they can't really even track, and it's not part of their system, but it's becoming more and more prevalent that people are using it. The value's going up. Maybe it is a gold-like digital currency. So now we're in this position where the United States government, with Trump coming in saying he's pro Bitcoin, they're saying, okay, we gotta get into this. Let's not set this aside. We can't really control what's happening here. We need to start working with it. And I do think it's kind of like a Trojan horse. It's the Bitcoin Trojan horse. It's just sitting out there on the beach. People are using it it's gaining value, it's gaining traction. People are buying things with it. People are storing their wealth in it, and they deliver it up to the door of the governing entities of the world and say, you might want a piece of this too. And they really don't have a leg to stand on just based on how it's performed in the last 15 years. They have to engage with it in some way. So they start bringing it in. They do ETFs, and then they start talking about Bitcoin reserves. And it's the Trojan horse to bring in the freedom money that should hopefully affect the world in a good way. But it's not going to be all roses and beers here, because depending on how it affects the financial system slowly or fast, this transition, if we do start to move towards a Bitcoin standard, I don't know what that looks like. And there will be a lot of pain, right? There are people who will not be ready for that. And in those types of huge technological or monetary shifts in history, we haven't seen that really in our lifetimes, right? 1970 was the gold standard, not that long ago. It really wasn't that long ago that we were bartering, to be honest. When you look at time on a straight line, it wasn't that long ago we were trading beads and jewels and bartering services. Money is brand new, and especially the money that we have now with the advanced central banks that print money and turn up inflation and turn down inflation and do all these things and create money out of thin air for their own purposes. That's very brand new. And I think that we are starting to see that it just isn't really working for the everyday person. And people are starting to wake up to that, I think. And like I said, this may not be a painless transition, but something is going to happen. And I'm not saying it's Bitcoin, right? I know I talk a lot about Bitcoin, but it is the first and the best. But something is going to change, or has to change, based on how our world operates when it comes to money. And I don't know what that's going to look like. And I'm not sure how many people get hurt in the process of such a big change in direction for how the world views, sees, and uses money. And look, the history of money, it's a big subject. There's a lot to it. And like I said, it is not taught in schools. I never even knew anything about this stuff at all, or cared, really, frankly, didn't fucking care. Because I thought everything was fine, But when you start peeling back the layers, and especially when I got into cryptocurrency and I started actually doing math and learning about how money works, it just innately teaches you that the system we are using right now is fucking broken. It's really bad. And I'm not an expert in anything. I'm not an expert in Bitcoin. I'm not an expert in money. I'm just a regular pleb who didn't know shit about shit when I first started into this. But using cryptocurrency has forced me to upgrade my financial IQ like 1,000,000%. And I think that's one of the biggest opportunities that cryptocurrency and digital assets offer to people coming into the space. I think it's really cool that you could start trading a meme coin, make a bit of money, and you're like, oh, what's this? It takes a long time to get to, the end where you're into the money and you're into the technology and learning about how this could change the world. That jump does take a while. I didn't start doing that until maybe two years ago or so, in my 6-year journey. So, and maybe that's the actual, the phrase you got to shitcoin before you Bitcoin. Maybe that there's an underlying bigger narrative there in that statement. Like, maybe you do have to shitcoin before you Bitcoin, or maybe you have to shitcoin and Bitcoin before you actually understand how the current modern finance is continually fucking you every single day. Every dollar you make is worth less every day. It's really sad to see. And most people don't understand what is happening to their finances. And if you can't save money, even if you can save money, a couple bucks, that money is going to be worth less and less. You take that amount of money that you think is a large stockpile to your retirement, and you think that that's going to get you very far? No. Maybe 5-10 years ago it was working because you could get maybe 2 or 3% on your savings, but now you can't get that. It's only losing value. So by the time you get into your non-working years and you have to just spend money and you're not really making any, the money you're spending that you worked so hard for, your time and energy, is worth half as much. And you thought you're going to live a great retirement, and it's just not going to happen. It's a really sad thing to see. And I think people are really starting to wake up to it. Your average person doesn't invest in the stock market. Your average person doesn't have enough money to buy a couple houses and have some rentals. Your average person nowadays can't even really afford to buy one home to live in. Like, some people can't even afford the rent, not even to own anything. And that's just burning money away. So a lot of changes to come, I think. And you just have to make sure that you are educating yourself and doing the right moves and paying attention to it. You got to pay attention to it. Like I said, I never really cared, but you have to care. And maybe me having kids, that changed things for me. I have to make sure that they're going to be okay. That's a big task, right? Looking 50 years out when I might not even be around. How do you build towards that when you make a good wage and you're still basically paying your bills, and that's pretty much it? You're not really saving much, and the stuff that you do save gets devalued. There's got to be something else, So I do look at Bitcoin as a freedom money and a savings vehicle. When I look at the graph and the timings of things and the 4-year cycles, I don't want to never not have some Bitcoin just based on history alone. So, yeah, that's my bit on money, guys. I just thought we'd run that down. If you have any questions or anything, reach out to the show. Like I said, I am not an expert in anything, finance, whatever. I'm just narrating what I have learned in my journey here, and I'm just giving you my opinion on what I see in my everyday. So don't take anything as like pure advice. It's just to get the conversation going. It's just to spur your inspiration and your brain to want to maybe learn a bit more and decide that, I do need to look at certain things in my life. And it doesn't have to do with anything with cryptocurrency. It's just the monetary system and the government systems we live in these days are kind of hurting the everyday person. And that's kind of always been the case, but people are waking up a little bit more to it, I think. And they're a little sick of it. So that's all I got today, guys. Like I said, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Honestly, I didn't think that anyone was going to download this podcast. And the numbers have just been going up and up, and the interest is really a lot higher than I thought it would be. And I am enjoying doing it, and I will continue to do it. So thank you very much for listening, guys. Make sure you head over to our Linktree and smash all our subscribes. It is linktr.ee/DeFiCast. You'll find all of Celexa's links to all her social media. You'll find our Telegram there. You'll also find all of the legacy podcast apps you can subscribe to. And make sure you're listening to us on Fountain FM. It is the Nostr-bound, Bitcoin-enabled podcast app that I am absolutely loving. So make sure you're following us on there and listen to all your podcasts on the Fountain app. It's value for value exchange, and you can stack your sats there. So I'll see you guys on the other side of my holidays. I'm going to some sunny skies in Florida. There'll be a couple episodes that are released during that time, so hope you do enjoy them. And we'll see you when I get back. Take profits, not screenshots. Sell your shitcoins and stack your sats. See you, everybody.